All right, so you're ready to really improve your spoken English.
And we are too.
We're going to deep dive today
Rare.
into
A great podcast.
yes, a YouTube podcast called Learn English Podcast by these two hosts, Leo and Gwen.
It's a really fun one.
Yeah, and they they jump right into it.
Yeah.
The fear.
That's right.
People are afraid to speak English.
Of course.
Even when they understand it really well.
And what's interesting is they highlight that fear is a completely normal part of the process.
Oh, totally.
Even experienced speakers experience it sometimes.
Oh, for sure?
So just take a second and think about it. What are your biggest fears when it comes to speaking English?
Oh, gosh, so many.
Is it stumbling over words?
Yes.
Not sounding native enough? Or maybe just not being understood?
Yes, all of those things.
Yeah.
Like that time I tried to order a latte in a really crowded coffee shop, and it came out sounding like lottery.
No.
It was so embarrassing.
But we've all had those moments.
Yeah.
I know I have.
So what do we do?
Well, they offer this brilliant tip, start small.
Okay.
They suggest practicing with friends.
Okay.
Or even just talking to yourself in the mirror.
Wait in the mirror.
In the mirror.
Oh, yeah.
It might sound silly, but it's a surprisingly effective way to get comfortable hearing yourself speak English.
Oh, okay.
Because it lets you just focus on the pronunciation,
Right.
intonation, and just getting those words flowing
Yeah.
without the pressure of an audience.
Okay. So like giving myself a pep talk, but in English.
Exactly. And if you're feeling brave, you can even record yourself.
Ooh.
And this way you can analyze your progress over time.
Ah, yeah.
And pinpoint areas for improvement.
I like that.
Yeah.
They also talk about, narrating your life.
Yes.
Like a documentary.
Like you're David Attenborough
Yeah.
making a nature documentary.
Exactly. And it's just you making coffee in the morning.
But you're narrating it.
But I'm narrating it.
In English.
In English.
That's the key.
Love it.
It's about training your brain to think in English, even for the most mundane things.
Yeah, that's right.
Weaving it into the fabric of your daily life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it becomes less of a separate activity and more just a natural part of how you think.
Yes.
And they also talk about using language apps and reading out loud.
Yeah, those are great tips too.
And I have kind of a bonus tip.
Oh, let's hear it.
Find an online community that's all in English,
Okay.
but it's about something that you're passionate about,
I love that.
like a hobby.
Yeah.
And you'll pick up so much.
Of course, because when you're engaged in something you actually enjoy,
Yeah,
learning just becomes so much easier.
totally.
It's fun.
And then they talk about mimicking,
Uh-huh.
like if you have a favorite English speaker.
Yeah, like who's your favorite?
Oh, gosh, there's so many.
Yeah.
But it's not about like becoming them.
No,
Right?
they say it's about absorbing the nuances,
Yeah.
like their pronunciations,
Yeah.
their intonation, even their cultural expressions.
Right. So like what would you say
Yeah,
if you were presenting the evening news?
exactly.
Okay, but isn't that a little bit like
Risky.
risky? Yeah.
Yeah, they address that concern.
Okay, good.
They emphasize that the key is to be inspired by these speakers,
Okay.
not to try to become them.
Right.
You're borrowing elements that you admire
Got it.
and incorporating them into your own unique voice.
It's like building your own style, but
Yeah.
with inspiration.
Exactly. It's finding what resonates with you and adapting it to fit your personality.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, most of us consume a lot of English passively.
Like watching TV,
Yeah, watching movies, listening to music.
going through social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we make that actually work for us?
Well, that's where you have to shift gears
Okay.
from passive consumption
Uh-huh.
to active engagement.
Right.
It's not enough to just let the sounds of English wash over you.
Right.
You need to process it,
Okay.
dissect it.
Uh-huh. And make it your own.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, they give us a few strategies,
Okay, great.
like reflecting on what we've consumed.
Okay,
So after you watch a movie, try to explain the plot to yourself
in English.
in English.
I do that all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, and I often catch myself using phrases that I heard in the movie.
That's great.
It's fun.
It means you're absorbing those patterns
Yes.
and those expressions.
Ah, exactly.
They also say embrace the power of subtitles.
Oh, subtitles are my favorite.
Yes.
I learned so much vocabulary from subtitles.
Because you're seeing the spoken word and the written word
Yes.
together.
Exactly.
And they also suggest reading a chapter of a book and then summarizing it,
Oh, yeah.
or even discussing it with somebody in English.
I do that with a friend.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're putting it into practice.
Yeah.
That's great. And that actually leads us to our next point,
Okay.
which is starting conversations.
Yeah. gosh, just thinking about that.
Yeah, it can be scary.
But they offer some really good icebreakers
Okay, I'm ready.
that can help you overcome those initial hurdles.
Yeah.
And it's all about finding common ground. Like,
Yeah.
what do you have in common with this person
Right.
that you can talk about?
Okay.
So one of their suggestions is to ask for local food recommendations.
Food. I can talk about food.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's universal. Everyone loves to talk about food.
It's true.
And it's a great way to learn about local culture, too.
Yeah.
So what about if you're not in a foodie mood?
Okay, what else?
They suggest sharing travel stories.
Oh, I love to hear travel stories.
Yeah, everyone has a travel story.
Yes.
Even if it's just a story about getting lost
Exact.
in your own city.
I've done that.
Right.
But what about complimenting somebody?
Oh, that's a good one.
Is that too risky?
Well, they emphasize that it has to be genuine. Like,
Yes.
if you love somebody's shirt,
Yeah.
you can say, I love your shirt. Or
Yeah.
if they have cool jewelry,
Yes.
or they just have great energy. So it has to be authentic.
Authentic. Okay.
But all this talk about icebreakers and starting conversations brings up another element that they talk about,
What's that?
confidence.
Oh, confidence. Yeah.
They say it's not just about feeling good.
Right.
It actually impacts how well you speak.
Right.
It's like a secret weapon
Uh-huh.
that unlocks fluency
Wow.
and makes you a more engaging communicator.
So tell me more about that.
Okay, well, we're actually going to take a quick break and then we'll come back.
Okay.
And we'll dive into confidence
This is good.
and how to get more of it.
I can't wait. Okay, so we're back and we're talking about confidence.
Yeah, confidence is key.
So how do we get more of it?
Well, they say true confidence comes from believing in your ability to learn and grow.
Okay.
It's about having that positive mindset
Right.
and focusing on the progress you've made
Yeah.
rather than dwelling on the mistakes.
Because mistakes are going to happen.
Mistakes will happen.
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
Totally. So how do we take all this and turn it into action?
Well, they have a call to action at the end of the podcast.
Uh-huh.
They urge listeners to get out there and speak.
No more hiding.
No more hiding.
Put yourself out there.
But they acknowledge it can be scary.
Oh.
So they offer some suggestions to make it a little less daunting.
Okay, like what?
So one suggestion is to find a language partner.
Look at a language buddy.
Yes, a language buddy.
I love that.
You can practice with regularly
Yeah.
in a safe, supportive environment.
Awesome. And if you can't find a language partner?
Well, they suggest joining a conversation group
Okay.
or even just striking up a conversation
With a stranger?
with someone in your daily life.
Yeah. Okay.
Like at the coffee shop or
Yeah.
at the store,
Yeah.
just little things.
But even that feels scary.
They emphasize starting small.
Okay.
Like even just hello
Yeah.
or thank you
Uh-huh.
in English
Yeah.
is a victory
That's true.
worth celebrating.
Celebrate the small wins.
Exactly. So you build that momentum.
It's like building a muscle.
Yes, exactly.
Start with the little weights
Uh-huh.
and then work your way up.
Yeah, so as you practice those smaller interactions,
Yeah.
they'll become more and more natural.
Right.
And your confidence will grow.
But some days I'm just not feeling it.
Ah, motivation dips.
Yes.
What do I do then?
They talk about tapping into your intrinsic motivation.
Oh, wait, what?
Intrinsic motivation? Your personal what?
Oh, like, why am I doing this?
Yes, exactly. Why are you learning English?
Okay.
What are your goals?
So I need to remember my goals.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, do you want to travel the world?
I do.
Connect with people from different cultures?
Yes.
Advance your career?
Yeah.
Pursue education?
All of those things.
So when you're feeling that dip,
Yeah.
remember why you're doing it.
Remind myself.
Yes, and visualize yourself achieving those goals.
Okay.
And let that excitement
Yeah.
fuel you.
I love that.
Yeah.
And speaking of fuel,
We got to celebrate our successes.
they say celebrate every victory no matter how small.
Yeah.
So maybe you had a short conversation
With somebody.
with a barista in English.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Celebrate that.
Okay.
Or maybe you understood a whole podcast episode without subtitles.
That's a big one.
It is a big one.
Yeah.
Celebrate it.
So acknowledge those victories.
Yes.
No matter how small.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
It's like those little rewards you get in video games.
Exactly.
Yeah, it keeps you going.
It keeps you motivated.
So it's a journey,
It is.
not a destination.
It's a marathon,
Yes.
not a sprint.
Speaking of marathons, I think it's time to talk about
What?
mistakes.
Ah, yes. Those pesky mistakes.
Because they happen.
They do.
So how do we deal with them?
That is a great question. And
Yeah.
you know what? We're going to take another quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back,
Ah.
we'll dive into mistakes.
All right. I'm ready. All right, so we're back, and we're talking about mistakes.
And how to deal with them.
Because we all make them.
We do. It's part of the process.
Yeah, so what's the best way to approach them?
Well, they say to shift your mindset
Okay.
from perfection
Uh-huh.
to progress.
So not about being perfect.
No, because that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And it can really set you up for disappointment.
Right, so focus on progress instead.
Yes. Focus on those small improvements over time.
So those mistakes are like feedback.
Exactly. They're little nudges
Okay.
pointing you in the right direction.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just so embarrassing.
Oh, I know.
Like in the moment.
It can be really awkward.
Yeah.
But they emphasize the importance of not taking yourself too seriously.
Right.
Everyone makes mistakes.
Even native speakers?
Even native speakers all the time.
It's true.
So instead of dwelling on those awkward moments,
Uh-huh.
acknowledge it.
Okay.
Maybe even laugh about it.
Yeah.
And then move on.
So use humor.
Humor is a great tool.
Yeah, it kind of takes the power away
It does.
from the mistake.
And it makes it a little bit lighter.
Yeah, and most people are pretty forgiving,
They are.
especially if you're trying your best.
Especially in another language.
Exactly.
They appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
And they're happy to help.
But all this talk about mistakes reminds me of another fear.
What's that?
Sounding native.
Ah, yes, the perfect accent.
Do I have to have a perfect accent?
Well, they say no.
Really?
There's no one right way to speak English.
So I don't have to sound like a news anchor
Nope.
or a movie star?
No. They encourage listeners to embrace their unique accents
Really?
and dialects.
Wow.
Because that's what makes English so rich and vibrant.
That's true. There are so many different accents.
There are.
So it's okay to have an accent.
It's more than okay.
So I can just be myself
Be yourself.
and just focus on communicating clearly.
That's the goal.
I love that.
And as you gain confidence
Yeah.
and fluency, you'll naturally start to refine those things anyway.
Right.
But your accent is part of your identity.
Yes.
There's no need to erase it.
I love that message.
Yeah.
It's about connection and expression.
That's what language is all about.
Yeah. Sharing ourselves with the world.
Exactly. And they end their podcast with this really great message.
What's that?
They encourage listeners to get out there and speak,
Yeah.
embrace the journey,
Yes.
and celebrate every step along the way.
Because it's a process
It's a process.
and it's ongoing.
It is. And the most important thing is to keep practicing,
Yeah.
keep learning,
Uh-huh.
keep having fun.
It shouldn't feel like a chore.
No, it should be enjoyable.
Exactly.
And the ultimate goal is to connect with others,
Yeah.
share your ideas,
Right.
and experience the world in a new way.
And speaking English can help you do all of those things.
It opens up so many doors.
So to everyone out there who's learning
Get
English,
going.
keep practicing.
Celebrate your wins.
Embrace those challenges.
You got this.
And remember, your voice matters.
Your stories deserve to be heard.
And we're excited to hear them.
We are.